The time is now 6:30. I'm going to be calling the October 11th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Delory,
Here.
Mata,
Present.
Unkin,
Present.
Chase,
Here.
Stiegel,
Here.
James.
Present.
First item is item 3A, minutes. Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes for September 13th, 2022. Can I get a motion?
With a motion, I move that we approve item 3A. Second that.
Got a motion from Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Mata. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item, 4A, citizen comment period. At this time, we invite citizens to make comments on any item on the agenda or any other item concerning city business. Do ask that you limit your time to 3 minutes. Seeing none, I will close the citizen comment period. Next item is 5A, presentation. Recognition of Megan McCall for her years of service on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Atkinson.
Will Atkinson, Director of Planning for the record. I actually might get you to come up here with me. So Megan was a member of our Planning and Zoning Commission for about 4 years. She's done a lot of work. We've enjoyed her time. And she's no longer on the commission, but that's okay. But so we're here to recognize her service. I really don't have a speech laid out, but if you want the opportunity to say anything, you're more than welcome to, but it's up to you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. Yeah, it's been a good 4 years to learn and grow and watch the city grow, and I'm super excited that you're the planning director now and seeing how much you've grown in the last 4 years and just everyone who's new here. It's a really great opportunity, and thank you.
And I think we have a plaque for her, and we can probably get a picture, and probably need help with someone taking a picture. But yeah, we all come down at the front of the dais and have it presented and everything. So take a picture with presenting the plaque to her, I guess.
Thank you. Oh, I get my
Look at the picture. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you again, Megan. On behalf of the commission, thank you. Next item on the agenda is consent, items 6A through F. I will go ahead and make the motion. Part of my motion is going to be a correction to item 6B. It should say Plum Creek Phase 2 instead of Plum Creek Phase 1. So that is my motion. Can I get a second?
If I may interrupt, also 6C, it should be also Phase 2.
I'll amend to include 6C as well, to say Plum Creek Phase 2, Section 5. Can I get a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Chase, second by Commissioner James. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is item 7A, zoning. Consider it and make a recommendation to City Council for a request by Connor Overby, PE, Z220106 to rezone approximately 7.17 acres of land from A agriculture to CC community commercial for property located on Lot 2, Block A of the Findley Subdivision in Hayes County, Texas. This item has a public hearing. We will open the public hearing. And for the record, all commissioners should have in front of them a comment form filled out by Alton and Dina Frank, which is in opposition to this matter. I'll briefly read the opposition. A residential homestead of 35 years borders the west side of the project property. Based on the significance of the proposed zoning change, we need additional time to respond to the request. Is there anybody else who would like to speak during the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing.
Kayla Sharp, City Planner for the record. So as you can see, this property is located just off of Old Stagecoach and FM 150. It does have a residential zoning next to it, fronting 150, and it's currently under construction with a combination convenience store, fuel station, car wash. It does have some surrounding residential areas. However, the applicant is requesting community commercial zoning, which is less intense of a use than retail services. And there's also requirements for like a 15-foot landscape buffer between any residential uses. And so it really takes into consideration the surrounding community, and staff will ensure that all measures are taken to address those issues during the site development process. And then we have some of the requirements you can see on the screen. So it limits the height, and to a certain extent it also limits the uses. You're not going to have a big box, Target or HEB or anything like that over there. More so small shops, restaurants, things like that. And it does align with the current comprehensive plan for the area. It is in the Midtown community, and community commercial is a conditional land use district for this area. And staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of this item to City Council. Any questions?
Any questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner Elkin.
Hi, how are you? One thing I was wondering while I reviewed this was, is there any insight into why community commercial was the requested zoning as opposed to neighborhood commercial, which is a recommended versus a conditional zoning format?
So Will would probably be better to answer this, and you can chime in. I know they were originally discussing retail services, and this is a step down from that.
Okay.
As to neighborhood commercial, Will?
Definitely. The biggest reason was neighborhood commercial limits the aggregate acreage to 1 acre maximum, and this lot it exceeds that. So it was a good go-between from a reduction of allowable uses and allowing to have a significant landscape buffer against the residential, which is not just going to be for the Frankie property to the west, but also the residential property for Sage Hollow being built right now to the north on the backside of this property. And so all the design restrictions that are built into it, along with the acreage requirements, it seemed to fit in very well. To address Mr. Frankie's objection to the zoning, he made a statement that he didn't have enough time to review it and what have you. I believe he was requesting a site development permit, if you will, which in this case, with straight zoning, that does not happen until after the zoning is approved by council. It's one of the successive permits. So you get your zoning in place, then you do your subdivision's already done, actually. So that after the zoning, the next step will be a site development permit. It'll be a public document. Staff will review it and make sure that it's code compliant against this code. And if we'll be happy to, by all means, and to coordinate with Mr. Frankie so he sees what's going on. He will probably reach out to us, quite honestly, and we'll be happy to share it with him. But when the applicant came forward wanting to rezone it to commercial, point of sale commercial, which this is, we made a point for them to understand that we had concerns for the adjacent residential. And we anticipated there was going to be some discussion by the adjacent residential owners, and this seemed to be the best fit.
Any other questions?
Yes. I noticed in the staff report there is, under permitted uses, there's fuel station with the asterisk. Is that asterisk the thing that we have all talked about the limitation? Or is there a different special over thing for this?
So with the ordinance that was passed in May limiting the location of gas stations, and given the fact that this property is right next to a gas station that's currently under construction, a gas station would not be allowed to be constructed on this site.
Just to clarify, use for the neighborhood commercial, they're not allowed to do drive-through restaurants or banks, but for community commercial, they are allowed to do drive-throughs. And I know this side of 150, they don't have any restaurants right now, but the other side of 150, that adjacent corner block, they're going to have two fast food restaurants. So something to think about.
Yeah, and that will come in the site development permit, the actual intended uses of the site.
If you don't mind, the restaurant with drive-through, there are clarification requirements for that perspective. Where is it?
It's like the operating hours and the line of sight and lighting and stuff, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. The drive-through facility cannot be within 75 feet of a residentially zoned property. So it's by default, that's going to push it a little bit forward of the site, closer to the road. So it does provide more of a buffer on top of the landscaping as well, that the drive-throughs are further away from the residential side as well.
Okay. Do you think that that's one thing that they're going to be pursuing? I know we said that it said, I think, 2 or 3 restaurants on the site.
There's a possibility there could be some. When it comes to straight zoning requests, we have to be very careful that we don't delve into the use side of things,
Okay.
other than just generally saying these uses are allowed per state law.
Uh-huh.
The only time you can condition a zoning district is during the plan with a PUD. But staff felt that all the other site restrictions would have you effectively perform the job adequately, that we would already incorporate it into a PUD if we asked them to pursue that. This zoning district is very robust compared to a lot of our other ones, they don't offer a lot of protections against the adjacent residential.
I do have one other question, and then I'll stop. So I read that this is going to be along the Vibe Trail, and I see that there's a Vibe spot, like I guess it's south of the property. Is the Vibe Trail running on this side or on the other side? It would be the other side, right? And this would, I think it said it would integrate with it.
That is yet to be determined which side of the road it's going to be on, but it is going to be adjacent. It's going to be in near proximity to it. The old Stagecoach Road realignment will incorporate the Vibe Trail on one side wherever it's most practical, but there's a massive opportunity for any development happening along the stretch to incorporate that, whether it be to do a little spur of the Vibe Trail. They have an opportunity to do that. There's a wastewater line easement that bisects this, that serves the gravity wastewater for Sage Hollow to the north of them, behind that property. And the Vibe Trail within that property aligns almost directly across from it. So there's an opportunity there to fill the gap.
Yeah.
Additionally, they could use the spur to bring people in with golf carts and have an opportunity to account for a certain percentage of their parking spaces to be golf cart parking as well.
Okay.
They have the opportunity.
Yeah, that was one of my concerns, was if the road bond gets approved next month by the voters, that right now is supposed to become a 4-lane undivided road, and I was thinking, well, how are people going to really connect and integrate with the vibe spot if they're on the other side and they have to cross 4 lanes of traffic? So, okay, that's good
Yes,
to
ma'am.
know.
And a lot of that stuff, we catch at the site development side of things.
Okay.
The fun part of, I'll say fun in quotations, about this aspect of it with the bond program is it's not in place yet. The voters haven't taken it to, we haven't taken it to the voters yet for approval. They got to vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a 10% plan for the realignment of Old Stagecoach Road, but that's all we have. So it's not even a complete document yet. It's enough to get a really conservative estimate, which is good, on the cost of what they think it's going to be. And they've built in inflation and other cost increases and what have you in their estimates, the engineers have. But it's still only a 10% schematic at this time. So if the bond passes, then we'll be starting to move forward with the projects over the next, it's a 10-year plan. And so as the plans get further refined, staff will be coordinating that aspect of it, or planning will. But there's a myriad of technical and engineering things that have to go on related to making sure the road is up to spec, which also includes bike lanes. Stagecoach Road is if you look at there's a Strava app. If you look at the heat map on there, it's the key connector between San Marcos and Austin for cyclists. Now that may be the Vibe Trail itself that they can use, and it may be a bike lane separate from the Vibe Trail. So there's a lot of there are some unknowns related to Old Stagecoach Road, but we'll be working through them with the bond passing. So
Thank you.
mm-hmm.
Any other questions for staff? Nope. Entertain a motion.
With a motion,
Commissioner James.
I move that we approve item 7A.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Delory. I'll get it, I promise. Any discussion on that motion? I just like to say that I don't, just looking at the land where it's at, I don't really see any other potential uses out there other than possibly multifamily. And the zoning, I think, makes sense for this location. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-1. Next item, 7B. Consider and make a recommendation to City Council for a request by Luis Granillo, Z220107, to rezone approximately 5.43 acres of land from A, agriculture, to RS, retail services, for property located approximately 450 feet north of the intersection of I-35 and Old Bridge Trail in Hays County, Texas. This item has a public hearing. I will now open the public hearing. Seeing no participants, I will close the public hearing.
Kayla Sharp, city planner for the record. So this property is just about 5.5 acres located along the I-35 frontage road. It's just north of the HEB shopping center. It's currently zoned agriculture, and they're requesting to rezone it to retail services. Again, this is just straight zoning, so we're not contemplating intended uses with this one. It's just retail services. And so this is, the property to the west is zoned warehouse, and then to the south is also retail services. To the north, you have some agriculture, and then across I-35, it is a PUD, a planned unit development, with some retail and multifamily residential. The comp plan for this area, it is in the, I believe, super regional node, or is it just regional? Regional node, sorry. And retail services is a recommended use for this area. It aligns with the comprehensive plan, and given its location as well, makes it a great property for the retail services zoning. It is fully compliant with everything that staff looks at for zoning perspective. It will also tie into the Vibe Trail. How is still in the works, but the intention is that it will tie into the Vibe at the kind of southern edge of the property. And staff asks that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of this item to council. Are there any questions?
Any questions for staff? I have one. So the one-lane bridge there, can you just explain for everybody in attendance the significance of that bridge and any potential traffic impacts?
Yes, so, and I'm going to have Will probably tag in on this one as well, but it is historic and does have some special significance. Basically, the city can't touch it, and so that will have to be taken into consideration for access to the site on the west side. But as far as the significance, Will knows the history about that a little better than I do.
Thank you. The reason I know about the history of it is because one time I happened to look it up. So it's the original Hayes County concrete bridge, the first one in Hayes County from their like 1915 or something to that effect. It was the original highway that went from Fort Worth down to San Antonio for the Postal Service. And so there's a monument there if you go out there, and a little placard on the side of the road. It is a single lane bridge. We can probably mill the asphalt that's over it and replace that, but that's literally all we can do without having to get the state involved if we need to do bridge repairs for whatever reason. So the rest of Kyle Crossing, though, it does show it to be widened, and as projects come along, we do ask them to dedicate right-of-way if it's necessary per the Transportation Master Plan. This specific parcel, while we're not having a specific discussion on uses that they may or may not want to use, it has double frontage, so there's an opportunity for to have a driveway or two on the west side, and if TxDOT allows multiple driveways on the east side, they can have that as well. So there's it would be designed appropriately to account for traffic movement. Also, like approximately 3 lots to the north, one of those lots was transferred to right-of-way back in, I don't know when it was. I think it was this century, but it's a little connector piece between Kyle Crossing and I-35. So from a transportation standpoint, even though we do need to be careful about that historic bridge, it's not it should be fine. The site's small enough. It's a large. It's a small for development permits purposes. It's a small site. The traffic generation is not going to be extreme. It's not going to be an HEB center. It's not going to, well, I say HEB super center, not HEB center like up in North Austin. It's not going to be a multifamily site. It's not going to be a single family housing, but it will generate some traffic, but it's going to be dependent on these specific uses. This area is slightly hidden. It does start sloping down to the south towards the creek. So what does happen there is they're probably going to try to make it a little bit more visible from an architectural standpoint, I anticipate. I don't know that for a fact, but it seems to make sense. If I was a developer, that's what I would do. But they will be required to integrate into the Vibe Trail to the south. It's not part of a Vibe spot, if you will, or a Vibe node, but the trail system does go through the floodplain at the south end. As the adjacent property to the east, the BB PUD, they will not build the trail in the regulatory floodway where the channel is, but they are allowed to build it in the floodplain. So it'll be higher up. So in 98% of the cases, it'll stay dry. That's part of code. So it'll be interesting to see the next component come online, assuming the zoning goes through and what have you. But as Kayla said, it's retail services, it's highway commercial. It is a smaller site. So it's perfectly in keeping with the comp plan and what have you. And there's a good opportunity here to continue the Vibe Trail system, even if it may be like a couple hundred feet, but that's still, every linkage counts, so.
Any other questions for staff? Nope. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Mata, second from Commissioner Stegel. Any discussion? No. I'll just say I was originally concerned about traffic going down there, knowing that we don't know what future development's going to look like, especially on the what is that, the west side of Kyle Crossing. But I have faith that if and when that land does have some type of development on it, we'll make the necessary improvements to that road, either building around the bridge or whatever. So, awesome. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
This next one's me.
Next item is 7C. Consider and make a recommendation for a request by the City of Kyle, Z220108, to rezone approximately 153 acres of land from A, agriculture, to R1A, single-family attached, approximately 16.5 acres of land from A, agriculture, to R32, multifamily residential 2, and approximately 1.5 acres of land from A, agriculture, to RS, retail services, for property located between Opal Lane and Roland Lane, adjacent to UPRR tracts, which includes all legally recorded lots in the final plats of Paramount Section 1, Paramount Section 2, and Opal Point at Kyle MF in Hayes County, Texas. This includes all the property contemplated in the development agreement between City of Kyle, Texas, and Intermandeco GP, LLC, or assignees, dated August 10th, 2017. That was a mouthful. This item has a public hearing. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Seeing no participants, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Mr. Atkinson.
Will Atkinson, for the record, Planning Director. I want to apologize for the mouthful of reading you had to do there, but it was intentional. This is an interesting zoning case. It's not a typical one at all, but it's important that it has to be addressed and what have you. So I'll give you a little bit of background on general projects that develop and how we go through that process, and then I'll provide some background in kind of what is transformed from this project moving forward. So frequently we have projects that are in our extraterritorial jurisdiction, or properties that developers want to develop. And in a lot of cases, they have entered into what are called Chapter 212 non-annexation development agreements. And what those do, it's to help preserve the agricultural status of landowners that are using their property for timber production, row crops, or maybe not even row crops, just crops in general, or animal husbandry, so agriculture uses. So that way, the city has shown that it has intent to annex, but state law allowed the city and the property owner to negotiate so they don't get brought in for a certain number of years into the city limits. if they preserve their agricultural status. That way, they have lower taxes. Usually agriculture type uses produce smaller revenue streams, and so there's lower income involved with that. So it keeps it affordable and everybody happy. At the time that the landowner decides to sell to a developer, the developer then comes to the city and say, hey, we have a contract, we are interested in purchasing this property, we want to do A, B, and C on this property. And then so we start having discussions with them about what they can do per our comprehensive plan and the uses associated with that. And then to get to yes on that, they start negotiating with staff. City council sees it a few times back in executive session, and everybody comes to a general agreement on you're going to be annexed, but these are the uses you can have. Here are the restrictions associated with it, and we're able to negotiate everything down to the T. So this is a project that has a development agreement and 2 addendums, but the important thing that we focus on is the section 2.02 in the original agreement. Per state law, we can negotiate that and get this project that we all wanted to see. And this is back in 2017. It was a year after I started working, so it was an entry-level planner. So we had this project come through, and in 2.02 it says the zoning districts are going to be R1A, which is the single-family residential associated with this project. Which is about 153 acres or so. It'll allow for our mid-tier multifamily or apartment development for about 16.5 acres, and it's around 21 units per buildable acre max, which is R32. And then it allows for a 1.5 acre retail site, kind of wedged between them, both of the single-family residential and the apartments right on Opal Lane. What it did not state, which it typically does, in most cases it does, and when staff reviewed it, it got missed, quite honestly, I believe, was that there's usually a time frame they have to apply for zoning following the approval of the annexation and development agreements. So within 90 days, it's typical to say within 90 days you have to apply for the zoning that's being indicated in the development agreement. It didn't say that, there was no time frame. So as the project started rolling along, they started submitting their subdivision plans, what have you. We started approving them, and we were like, hey, you need to start getting your zoning in. It's to your advantage. It didn't happen. We checked with legal. We had no enforcement mechanism to require it to happen by a certain time frame. And as the project keeps trucking along, they have 2 out of 4 sections already recorded for plats, which means they've sold off a couple hundred lots, or almost a couple hundred lots. It's something close to that, which means it makes it even more difficult if the developer applies for zoning to the site, for the overall site, because then they have to get technically their permission from every single landowner they've sold the property to, which should be over between 150 and 200 landowners, and they have to get all the individual documents, landowner authorization form that you may have seen in the preceding 2 zoning requests. Also, if some of those are rentals that are owned by a corporation or a commercial entity, then they have to get the comptroller documentation as well. So as we started figuring out, hey, we really need to get this resolved, because we're starting to get a lot of phone calls from lenders saying, okay, hey, these people are trying to sell this lot. The zoning is not there. Like, even lenders were noticing that. Usually we'll get a letter here and there saying, hey, can you confirm the zoning? But we're starting to receive those, right? So this is a way to resolve this. The city has powers granted to it by the state. We can unilaterally zone properties if we so choose to do so. We generally don't. Generally, we rely on the request of the property owner to do so, because it's typically fraught with legal issues. Because if we decide, hey, we're going to zone a property, whatever, then the landowner underneath doesn't want it to happen, there's going to be a lot of fighting going back and forth. So it's just usually not the smart way to go. We rely on development to happen, and the requests come to us, and then we consider it. In this specific case, it's easier to go the other way around, because if we reach out and say, we're going to zone this property, then we simply have to notify every single landowner that's on the tax rolls associated with it. And we provide the proper notification time frame, 15 days in the newspaper. We send out letters to every single property owner, so they are aware. This is simply a procedural zoning that's already allowed and required per the development agreement. Nothing else is changing with the project. This just puts the zoning in place. Everything that the residential uses can already have, they can keep doing. The development agreements further expound upon what they're allowed to do from a development code. That's still in place. This is simply dotting the I's, crossing the T, putting a pretty bow on it, wrapping up the zoning. And so we're just trying to resolve that, so it's just that one item taken care of. So staff believes that it's appropriate to do so, and it needs to happen anyway. So we're asking for y'all to recommend approval of the zoning request. Any questions?
Thank you, Bill. Any questions for staff?
Well, thank you. That was a lot.
It was.
But if I can say back to you what you said, the current plan, the plans that the developers have been using are all in accordance with our city plans and current restrictions and statutes. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The plans that they've submitted follow the zoning districts that are in the development agreement, and even the further restrictions in the development agreement on top of that. So there's concept plans associated with it. There's road improvements to Opal and Roland Lane as well. They have some other requirements for lotting and all that kind of stuff internally. So they are following the rules. There's just this item that needs to get taken care of, and so we can keep trucking along. So,
Thanks.
yes, sir.
Commissioner James?
What happens if this doesn't pass?
They can keep doing what they're already doing. However, the development agreement does say they need to have the zoning needs to be in place. So if the commission does not vote in the affirmative to make the recommendation, then it'll have to come back to be considered again. Anyway,
So as a follow-up, if we don't deal with this now, we'll have to deal with this later.
yes.
Any other questions for staff? So not to play echo, but just to make it perfectly clear, there are no changes. So the multifamily site is not getting larger. The retail services sites aren't getting larger. It is exactly what was laid out in the development plan. It's just going through the motions of getting the zoning in place so they can work with the lenders and
Yes.
move forward with the project.
That's accurate. No acreage is changing, anything like that. This is just a formality.
Okay. No other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Mata, second by Commissioner James. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up, item 8A, general discussion. Discussion only regarding planning and zoning requests for future agenda items. So we have a couple new commissioners. So typically at this point, if there's anything you'd like to have brought forth at a future meeting at the commission, this is kind of your time to connect with staff and let them know what you'd like to discuss. Commissioner James?
I have two items to ask about. One of them is a follow-up from last time when we asked about the MXD. Do you have any updates on whether that would be, like, is there a time frame for when we might see that?
I don't have any updates, I'll be honest. We have and I'll expound upon it more on our staff report, but we got the state conference coming up next week, and we have a couple other potential code amendments already being considered for the queue. So, and we still need to discuss it with administration as well. So, but it's still on my list.
Okay.
Thank you.
And my second item is, seeing as we have quite a few new folks and that we're also doing the comprehensive plan, I would like to see in like a future workshop, kind of like a 101 of just going through the code, going through what the zoning code is, what the comp plan is, just kind of get everybody kind of back up to speed, because we're going to be running through this process pretty fast. It's going to feel like for some of our new folks.
just to get a better understanding why we have the comp plan, what is it, what it entails, just generally. Is this? Yeah, this is on, right? Okay. And also maybe even expound upon that, if I may, how development happens in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say like that we also have the final approval for it. So if we don't, the ramifications of if we don't take care of it, it's not going to go to city council.
Yeah, that's fair.
Any other items? Nope. Next item, 9A, staff report. Mr. Atkinson.
Thank you. I have a couple items. Again, we have the state conference next week. Yeah, we don't have planning and zoning next week. We have the state conference next week. Myself, Kayla, Debbie, and then our interim director of economic development. We're all going from a staff perspective out to El Paso. A number of y'all are signed up. I know Debbie knows. What's up?
James and Alkin.
Is it just both of y'all? Oh, and Alex too, right? He's not going?
No. Alex is going.
He is?
He is?
Yeah.
Oh.
So just the three?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So I think it's going to be a blast. I've never been to El Paso before. Actually, that's incorrect. I went this summer on a road trip coming back, but I didn't really go to El Paso. I just kind of skirted it. It's a great opportunity to learn a lot about development, specifically development in Texas and how the process works. There's at every single state conference I've been to, there's been a chance for, they have like new commissioner and elected official training. So just the basics, there's a really good program they have for that specifically for Texas. But there's so many different diverse sessions you can go to. You get an awesome opportunity to do a lot of learning and just get to mingle with people from different cities and different communities and kind of learn what they're doing in the planning field and development and all that. It's a fantastic time. So we're really excited to go. We're really excited that y'all are able to make it. We also have, you've seen the email, the group email, and I appreciate y'all not responding as a group for quorum law. We're moving the October, thank you, 25th meeting, that's on a Tuesday, to that Thursday evening. That's when we were able to schedule our first real kickoff meeting with y'all as a Planning and Zoning Commission for our new comp plan we're about to really start delving into for the next 12 to 14 months. We are completely rewriting it for how we expect development to happen in the city, where it's supposed to happen, types of development, and what have you, a big picture. When council approved the contract for the Verdunity Group, who's our comp plan third-party group, they made the statement that they want y'all as the Planning and Zoning Commission to be the citizen committee putting it together and helping process it and to be able to take to them. So that's what we're doing on the Thursday instead, because they have 3 or 4 different other contracts related to comp plans right now, and so we were able to trying to get the first kickoff meeting in place and trying to get it as close to Tuesday as possible. So that was the result of it, was the Thursday. So I appreciate y'all that have responded. I hope we were able to do 100% attendance, but I also understand it if 1 or 2 people are not able to make it. So that's that. I think that's really the only 2 items I had. Do you have any? Oh, November 8th. November 8th is Election Day. So it's also a Tuesday, and it's the Planning and Zoning Commission. We are working through that night, trying to figure out exactly what needs to happen, whether we can just keep this partition closed, because the voting happens in the Falcone room right there. We just need to make sure we're working through that. There's a possibility it may need to be moved by a day as well. And if it does need to be moved, it'll probably be a Wednesday. And if they have concerns of voting, because early voting goes through up to the weekend, I believe, if I understand it correctly, and then they still have to make sure everything's secure. So up until actual voting day. So we'll let y'all know when we've figured that out. I'm hoping we can just have the meeting on the normal night, and it's not going to be a security risk. I hope everybody's okay with that from the election groups. So, but we'll let you know as soon as we get that figured out, which will be relatively quickly. Thank you for reminding me. That's really it, to be perfectly honest.
All right, thank you. Item 10, adjournment. I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Chase, second by Commissioner James. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.